My name is Lucas, and this is Chapter 12 of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone for audiobook. The Mirror of Your Eyes. Christmas was coming. One morning in mid-December, Hogwarts woke to find itself covered in several feet of snow. The lake froze solid, and the Weasley twins are punished for bewitching several snowballs so that they followed Quirrell around, bouncing off the back of his turban. The few owls that managed to battle their way through the stormy sky delivered mail had to be nursed back to health by Hagrid before they could fly off again. No one could wait for the holiday to start. While Gryffindor common room and the Great Hall roared with fires, the drafty corridors had become icy with bitter revel. The windows to the classroom, all Professor Snape's classes, came down in the dungeons. Their breath rose in the mist before they could, and they kept as close as possible to their hot cauldrons. "I do feel sorry," said Draco Malfoy, one potions class, "for all those people who have to stay at Hogwarts for Christmas because they're not wanted home." He was looking toward Harry as he spoke. Crabbe and Goyle chuckled. Harry was measured out. Powder spine of lionfish ignored him. Malfoy had even more unpleasant than usual since the Quidditch match. Disgusted that the Slytherins had lost, he had tried everything, laughing wide mouths. Trees Frog would be replacing Harry as Seeker next week. He realized that nobody found this funny because they were all so impressed that the way Hagrid had managed to stay on his bucking broomstick. So Malfoy, jealous and angered, he had gone back to taunting Harry about having no proper family. It was true that Harry wasn't going to pivot drive for Christmas. Professor McGonagall had come around the week before, making a list of students who would be staying for the holidays. Harry had signed up at once. He didn't feel sorry for himself at all. It would probably be the best Christmas he'd ever had. Ron and his brothers were staying too, because Mrs. and Mrs. Weasley were going to Romania to visit Charlie. When they left the dungeons at the end of the potions, they found a large fir tree blocking the corridor ahead. Two enormous feet sticking out of the air bottom, and the loud puffing sound told them that Hagrid was behind it. "Hi, Hagrid. Want any help?" Ron asked, sticking his head through the branches. "Nah, I'm all right. Thanks, Ron." "Would you mind moving out of the way?" came Malfoy's cold drawl from behind them. "Are you going to try to earn some extra money, Weasley, hopping to be gamekeeper yourself when you leave Hogwarts, I suppose? That hut of Hagrid's must seem like a palace compared to what your family used to." Ron dived at Malfoy. Snape came up the stairs. "Weasley!" Ron let go of Malfoy's robe. He was provoked. "Professor Snape," said Hagrid, sticking his head out of his hairy-faced tree. Behind the tree, Malfoy was insulting his family. That is it. Maybe fighting against Hogwarts rules." "Hagrid," said Snape sickly, 5 points from Gryffindor. "Weasley, and be grateful it isn't more. Move along, all of you." Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle pushed roughly past the tree, scattering needles everywhere, smirking. "I'll get them," said Ron, grinding his teeth at Malfoy's back. "One of these days I'll get him." "I hate them both," said Harry, Malfoy, and Snape. "Come on, cheer up. It's nearly Christmas," said Hagrid. "Tell you what, come with me, see what the Great Hall looks like, a treat." So the three of them followed Hagrid and his tree off to the Great Hall, where Professor McGonagall and Professor Flitwick were busy. With Christmas decorations. Hagrid, the last tree we put in the far corner, would you, the hall looked spectacular. My phone, dang it. Sorry. That'd be inconvenient. Put in the far corner, would you? The hall looked spectacular. Festoons of holly and mistletoe hung all around the walls, and no less than 12 towering Christmas trees stood around the room, some sparkling with tiny icicles, some glittering with hundreds of candles. How many days you've got until your holidays? Hagrid asked. Just one, said Hermione. And that reminds me, Harry, Ron, we've got half an hour before lunch. We should be in the library. Oh yeah, you're right, said Ron, tearing his eyes away from Professor Flitwick, who had golden bubbles blossoming out of his wand and trailing them over the branches of a new tree. The library, said Hagrid, following them out of the hall. Just before the holidays? Bit keen, aren't ya? Oh, we're not working, Harry told brightly. Ever since you mentioned Nicholas Flamel, we've been trying to find out who he is. You what? Hagrid looked shocked. Listen here. I've told you, drop it. It's nothing to do with the dog's garden. We just want to know who Nicholas Flamel is, that's all, said Hermione. Unless you like to tell us and save us some trouble, Harry added. We must been through hundreds of books already, and we can't find him anywhere. Just give us a hint. I know I read his name somewhere. I'm not saying anything, said Hagrid flatly. Just have to find out for ourselves then. Ron and they left, Hagrid looking disgruntled, and hurried off to the library. They had indeed been searching for books for Flamel's name ever since Hagrid had let it slip. Because how else were they going to find Snape was trying to steal? It was trouble. It was very hard to know where to begin, and not knowing what Flamel might have done to get himself a book. He was in great wizards of the 20th century, or notable magical names of our time. He was missing too from important magical discoveries and a study of recent developments in wizarding. And then, of course, there was a sheer-sized library of tens of thousands of books, of shelves, of narrow rows. Hermione took a list of subjects titles had decided to search, while Ron shut off down a row of books and started pulling them off the shelves random. Harry wandered over to the restricted section. He had been wondering for a while if Flamel wasn't somewhere in there. Unfortunately, you need a special signature signed note from one of the teachers to look at any of the restricted books, and he knew he'd never get one. These were the restricted books and he knew he'd never get one. These were restricted books, and he knew he'd never get one. These were books containing powerful dark magic never taught at Hogwarts, only read by older students studying advanced defense against the dark arts. What are you looking for, boy? Nothing, said Harry. Madam Prince, the librarian, brandished a feather duster at him. You better go out then. Go on. Out. Wished he'd been in a bit quicker at thinking up some story. Harry left the library. He and Ron and Hermione had already agreed they'd better not ask Madam Prince where they could find Flamel. They were sure she'd be able to tell him, but they couldn't risk Snape hearing what they were up to. Harry waited outside the corridor to see if the other two had found anything, but he wasn't hopeful. The book they had been looking for 2 weeks. After all, they only had odd moments between lessons. It wasn't a surprise if they found nothing. What they really needed was a nice long search without Madam Prince breathing down their necks. Five minutes later, Ron and Hermione joined them. Shaking their heads, they went off to lunch. You will keep looking while I'm away, won't you? Said Hermione. And send me an owl if you find anything. You could ask your parents if they know who Flamel is, said Ron. It'd be safe to ask them. Very safe. They're both dentists, said Hermione. Once the holiday started, Ron and Harry were having a good time. Think about Flamel. They had a dormitory to themselves. The common room was far emptier than usual, so they were able to get the good armchairs by the fire. They sat by the owl, eating anything they could spare on toasting fork. Bread, English muffins, marshmallows, and plotting ways to get tasting Malfoy expelled, which were fun to talk about, even if they wouldn't work. Ron also started teaching Harry wizard chess. This was exactly like Muggle chess, except that the figures were alive, which made a lot more direct troops in battle. Ron's set was very old and battered, like everything else he owned. It had once belonged to someone else in his family. In case of his grandfather, however, old chessmen weren't a drawback at all. Ron knew so well he never had trouble getting them to do what he wanted. Harry played with chessman Seamus Finnegan had lent him, and they didn't trust him at all. He was a very good player, and they kept shouting at different advice at him, which was confusing. Don't send me there. Can't you see he's knight? Send him. We can afford to lose him. Christmas Eve, Harry went to bed looking forward to the next day for food, for fun, but not expecting any presents at all. He woke early in the morning. However, the first thing he saw was a small pile of packages on the foot of his bed. "Merry Christmas," said Ron sleepily as Harry scrambled out of the bed and pulled on his bathrobe. "You too," said Harry. "Willie, look at this. I've got some presents." "What did you expect? Turnips?" said Ron, turning to his own pile. It's a lot bigger than Harry's. Harry picked up the tart parcel. It was wrapped in the back of thick brown paper. It scrawled across, "To Harry from Hagrid." Inside was a roughly cut wooden flute. Hagrid had obviously whittled it for himself. Harry blew it. It sounded a bit like an owl. The second, very small parcel contained a note. "We received a message that includes your Christmas present from Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia." Taped to the note was a 50-pence piece. "That's friendly," said Harry, fascinated by the 50 pence. "Weird," he said. "What a shape. This is money?" "You can keep it," said Harry, laughing at how pleased Ron was. "Hagrid and my aunt and uncle. Who sent these?" "I think I know who that one's from," said Ron, turning a bit pink and pointing to a very lumpy parcel. "My mom, I told her you didn't expect any presents, and oh, no," she groaned. "She'd made you a Weasley sweater." Harry had torn open the parcel to find a thick, hand-knitted sweater in emerald green and a large box of homemade fudge. "Every year she makes us a sweater," said Ron, unwrapping his own. "In mine, it's always maroon." "It's really nice of her," said Harry, trying the fudge, which was very tasty. His next present contained candy, a large box of chocolate frogs from Hermione. This was the only one left parcel. Harry picked it up and felt very light and unwrapped it. Something fluid, something silver gray, something went slithering onto the floor, where it lay in gleaming folds. Ron gasped. "I've heard of those," he said in a hushed voice, dropping the box of every flavor beans he got from Hermione. "If that's what I think it is, they're really rare, really valuable." Harry picked the shining silvery cloth off the floor. It was strange to the touch, like water woven into material. "It's an invisibility cloak," said Ron, a look of awe on his face. "I'm sure it is. Try it on." Harry threw the cloak around his shoulders, and Ron gave a yell. "It is! Look down!" Harry looked down at his feet, and they were gone. He dashed into the mirror. Sure enough, his reflection looked back at him, just his head suspended in midair, his body completely invisible. He pulled the cloak over his head, and a reflection vanished completely. "That's a note," said Ron. A note fell out of it. Harry pulled on the cloak and seized the letter, written in narrow, loopy writing they had never seen before. These were the following words. "Your father left me this in my possessions before he died. It's time it was returned to you. Use it well. A very Merry Christmas to you." There was no signature. Harry stared at the note. Ron admired the cloak. "I'd give anything for one of these." He said, "Anything. What's the matter?" "Nothing," said Harry. He felt very strange. Who had sent the cloak? It had really belonged to his father. Before he could say or think of anything, the dormitory door was flung open by Fred. George Weasley bounded in. Harry stuffed the cloak quietly out of sight. He didn't feel like sharing it with anyone else. "Merry Christmas!" "Hey, look, Harry's got a Weasley sweater too." Ha ha. Fred and George were wearing blue sweaters with a large F on it and the other a G. "Harry, it's better than ours, though," said Fred, holding up a Harry sweater. "She obviously makes more of an effort if you're not in the family." "Why aren't you wearing yours, Ron?" George demanded. "Come on, they're lovely and warm." "I hate maroon," Ron moaned heartfully. "I hate maroon," as he pulled it over his head. "You haven't got any letters on yours?" George observed. "Suppose she thinks you don't forget your name. But we're not stupid. We know we're called George and Forge, Gred and Forge." "What's all this noise?" Percy Weasley struck his head through the door, looking disapproving. He had clearly gotten halfway through unwrapping his presents to carry a lumpy sweater over his arm, which Fred seized. "P for perfect. Get it on, Percy. Come on. We're all wearing ours. Even Harry got one." "I don't want," said Percy thickly, as the twins forced it over his head, knocking his glasses askew. "And you're not sitting with the perfects today either," said George. "A Christmas is time for the family." They frog marched Percy from his room, his arms pinned to his side by his sweater. Harry never, all his life, had such a Christmas dinner. 100 fat roast turkeys, mountains of roast boiled potatoes, platters of chipotles, turoons of buttered peas, silver boats, and thick, rich gravy and cranberry sauce, and stacks of wizard crackers. Every few feet along the table, these fantastic party favors were nothing like the feeble meagles ones the Dursley usually bought with their plastic toys and their flimsy paper hats inside. Harry pulled his wizard cracker with Fred, and it didn't just bang. It went off like a blast, like a cannon, and engulfed them in a cloud of blue smoke, while from the inside exploded a rear admiral's hat and several lines white mice. Up at the high table, Dumbledore had swapped his pointed wizard's hat with a flowered bonnet and was chuckling merrily at a joke Professor Flitwick had read him. Flaming Christmas puddings followed the turkey. Percy nearly broke his teeth on a silver sickle embedded in his slice. Watched Hagrid getting redder and redder in the face. He called for more wine, finally kissing Professor McGonagall on the cheek, who, to Harry's amazement, giggled and blushed on the top hat loose-sided. When Harry finally left the table, he was laden down with a stack of things out of crackers, including a pack of non-explodable luminous balloons, grow your own warts kit, and his own new wizard's chess set. The white mice had disappeared. Harry had a nasty feeling they were going to end up at Mr. Norris's Christmas dinner. Harry and the Weasleys spent a few happy afternoons having a furious snowball fight on the ground. Then, cold, wet, gasping for breath, they returned to a fire in Gryffindor common room, where Harry broke his new chess set by losing particularly to Ron. It expected him he wouldn't have lost so badly if Percy hadn't tried to help him so much. After a meal of turkey sandwiches and crumpets, a trifle of Christmas cake, everyone felt too full and sleepy, too much before bed, except to sit and watch Percy chase Fred and George all over Gryffindor Tower, because they'd stolen his perfect badge. It had been Harry's best Christmas ever. Yet something had been nagging at the back of his mind all day. Not until he climbed into bed he was free to think about it. The invisibility cloak. Whoever had sent it. Ron, full of turkey cake. Nothing mysterious bothered him. Full of sleep. As soon as he'd drawn the curtains of a four-poster, Harry leaned over the side of his own bed and then pulled the cloak out from under it. His father's. This had been his father's. He let the material flow over his hands, smooth and silk, light as air. Use it well, the note said. He had to try it now. He slipped it over the bed and wrapped the cloak around himself. Looking down at his legs, he saw only moonlight and shadow. It's a very funny feeling. Use it well. Suddenly Harry felt wide awake. The whole of Hogwarts was open to him. The cloak excitement flooded through him as he stood there in the dark silence. He could go anywhere and Filch would never know. Ron grunted in his sleep. Should Harry wake him? Something held him back. His father's cloak. He felt that this time, the first time he wanted to use it alone. He crept out of the dormitory, down the stairs, across the common room, and climbed through the portrait hole. "Who's there?" squawked the fat lady. Harry said nothing. He walked down the corridor. Where should he go? He stopped, his heart racing, and thought it came to him, the restricted section in the library. He'd be able to read it as long as he liked, as long as he took to find out who Flammel was. He set off a drawing of the invisibility cloak tight around him as he walked. The library was pitch black and very eerie. Harry lit a lamp to see his way along a row of books. The lamp looked as if he was floating alongside him in midair, and even though Harry could feel his arm supporting it, the sight gave him the creeps. The restricted section was right at the back of the library. Stepping carefully over the rope that separated the books from the rest of the library, he held up the lamp to read the titles. He didn't tell him much. Their feeling faded gold lanterns spelled the words in language Harry couldn't understand. Some had no title at all. One book had the dark stain on it and looked horribly like blood. The hairs of the back of Harry's neck prickled. Maybe he was imagining it. Maybe he wasn't. But he thought faint whispering was coming from the books, as he knew someone was there who shouldn't be. He had to start somewhere. Setting the lamp down carefully on the floor, he looked along the bottom shelf for an interesting-looking book. A large black silver volume caught his eye. He pulled it out with difficulty because it was very heavy, and balancing on his knee to let it fall open. Piercing, blood-curdling shriek split the silence. The book was screaming. Harry snapped it shut, but the shriek went on and on, one high and broken, ear-splitting note. He stumbled backward and knocked over his lamp, which went out at once. Panicking, he heard footsteps coming down from the corridor outside. Stuffing Shrieking the book back onto the shelf, he ran for it. He passed Filch in the doorway. Filch's pale, wild eyes looked straight through him, as if Harry slipped under Filch's outstretched arm and streaked off up the corridor. The book's shrieks still ringing in his ears. He came to a sudden halt in front of the tall suit of armor. He had been so busy getting away from the library, he hadn't paid attention to where he was going. Perhaps it was dark. He didn't recognize where he was at all. There was a suit of armor near the kitchens. He knew he must have been 5 floors above there. "You asked me to come directly to you, Professor, if anyone was wandering around at night. And somebody's been in the library restricted section." Harry felt the blood drain out his face. Wherever he was, Filch must have knew a shortcut, because his soft, greasy voice. He was getting nearer, and to his horror, it was Snape who replied, "The restricted section? Well, they can't be that far. We'll catch them." Harry stood rooted to the spot as Filch and Snape came around the corridor ahead. They couldn't see him. Of course, it was a narrow corridor, and they came much nearer. They knocked right into him. The cloak didn't stop him from being solid. He backed away as silently as he could. The door stood ajar to his left. There was only hope. He squeezed it through, holding it beneath, trying not to move it. And to his relief, managed to get inside the room without noticing anything. They walked straight past. Harry leaned against the wall, breathing deeply, listening for their footsteps dying away. That had been close, very close. It was a few seconds before he noticed anything about the room he had hidden in. It looked like an unused classroom. The dark shapes of desks and chairs were piled against a wall, and there were upturned waste paper basket, but propped against the wall facing him was something that didn't look as if it belonged there. Something that looked as someone just put it there to keep it out of the way. It was a magnificent mirror as high as the ceiling, with an ornament gold frame. Standing on 2 clawed feet, there was an inscription carved around the bottom. "Irai star eru atbu karfu oit unwachi." His panic fading now that there was no sound of Filch and Snape, Harry moved closer to the mirror, wanting to look at himself, but no reflection again. He stepped to look in front of it. He had to clap his hands to his mouth and stop himself from screaming. He whirled around. His heart was pounding far more furiously than the book had screamed, for he had seen not himself in the mirror, but a whole crowd of people standing right behind him. But the room was empty. Breathing very fast, he turned slowly back to the mirror. There he was, reflected in it, a white, scarred-looking boy. And there reflected behind him at least 10 others. Harry looked over to his shoulder, but there was still no one there. Or were they all invisible too? Was in fact a room full of invisible people, and this mirror trick that it reflected them, invisible or not. He looked at the mirrors again. A woman standing right behind his reflection, smiling at him, waving, reached out his hand to touch his felt in the air behind him. If she was really there, he touched their reflection. If they were so close together, but he felt only air. She and the others existed only in the mirror. She was a very pretty woman. She had dark red hair, her eyes just like mine, Harry thought, edging a little closer to the glass. Bright green, exactly the same shape. But then he noticed she was crying, smiling, but crying at the same time. A tall, thin, black-haired man was standing next to her, put his arm around her. He wore glasses, and his hair was very untidy. It stuck back at the top. just as Harry's did. Harry was so close to the mirror now that his nose was nearly touching the glass of his reflection. "Mom," he whispered. "Dad?" I looked at him, smiling, and slowly Harry looked into the faces of the people in the mirror and saw other pairs of green eyes like his and other noses like his. Even a little old man who looked through had Harry's knobbly knees. Harry was looking at his family for the first time in his life. The Potters smiled and waved at Harry, and he stared hungrily back at them, his hands pressed flat against the glass as though he was hoping to fall right through it and reach them. He had a powerful kind of ache inside him, half joy, half terrible sadness. How long he stood there he didn't know. The reflection did not fade, and he did not look until a distant noise brought him back to his senses. He couldn't stay here. He had to find his way back to bed. He tore his eyes away from his mother's face, whispered, "I'll come back," and hurried from the room. "Your mother, you could have woken me up," said Ron crossly. You can come tonight. I'm going back," said Ron crossly. "Wait, sorry. I'm going back. I want to show you the mirror." "I'd like to see your mom and dad," Ron said eagerly. "And I want to see your family, all the Weasleys. You'll be able to show me your other brothers and everyone. You can see them any old time," said Ron. Just come round my house this summer. Anyway, maybe it was only shows dead people. Shame about not finding Flamel though. Have some bacon or something. Why aren't you eating anything?" Harry couldn't eat. He had seen parents and would be seeing them again tonight. He had almost forgotten about Flamel. It didn't seem very important to him anymore. Who cared about their three-headed dog and what it was guarding? What mattered to Snape as if he stole it, really? "Are you all right?" said Ron. "You look odd." What Harry feared most was that might not be able to find the mirror again. With Ron covered in the cloak too, they had to walk more slowly the next night. They tried reacting Harry's route from the library, wandering around the dark passage for nearly an hour. "I'm freezing," said Ron. "Let's forget it and go back." "No," Harry hissed. "I know it's here somewhere." They passed and got Joe's trail, at which opposite direction, but no one saw them. They passed the ghost of a tall witch, gliding in the opposite direction. But no one else. Just as Ron started moaning that his feet were dead with cold, Harry spotted the suit of armor. "It's here, just here, yes." He pushed the door open. Harry dropped the cloak from around his shoulder and ran to the mirror. There they were, his mother, his father, and Bean at the side of him. "See?" Harry whispered. "I can't see anything." Look at them. There are loads of them." "I can only see you." "Look in it properly. Go on, stand where I am." Harry stepped aside, but with Ron in the front mirror, he couldn't see his family anymore. Just Ron in his paisley pajamas. Ron staring transfixed at his images. "Look at me," he said. "Can you see all my family standing around you?" "No, I'm alone, but I'm different. I look older, and I'm head boy." "What?" "I'm wearing the badge like Bill used to. I'm holding the house cup of the Quidditch Cup. I'm the Quidditch captain, too." Ron tore his eyes away from the splendid sight to look eagerly at them. "Do you think this mirror shows the future?" "How can it? All my family is dead." Let me have another look. You had yourself all last night. Give me a bit more time, please." "You're only holding the Quidditch Cup. That's interesting. What about? I want to see my parents." "Don't push me." Sudden noise came outside the corridor, put an end to their discussion, and they hadn't realized how loudly they had been talking. "Quick, Ron threw the cloak back over them as the luminous eyes of still Mr. Norris came around the door. Ron and Harry stood quite still, both thinking of the same thing. Did the cloak work on cats? After what seemed an age, she turned and left. This isn't safe. She might have gone for Filch. I bet she heard us. Come on. As Ron pulled Harry out of the room, the snow hadn't melted, just then melted the next morning. Want to play chess, Harry? Said Ron. No. Why don't we go down and visit Hagrid? No, you go. I know what you're thinking about, Harry. That mirror. Don't go back tonight. Why not? I don't know. I got a bad feeling about it. And anyway, you've had in too much close shades already. Filch, Snape, Mrs. Norris, they know you're wandering around. And so what if they can't see you? So what if they can't find you? What if they walk into you? What if they knock something over? What if you knock something over? You sound like Hermione. I'm serious. Don't go. Harry, please, don't go. But Harry had only one thought in his head, which was to get track back in the front of the mirror, and Ron wasn't going to stop him. That third night he found his way more quicker than before. He was walking so fast he knew he was making more noise than he was wise. But he didn't meet anyone. And there were his mother's smaller father smiling happily at him. Again, one of his grandfathers nodding happily. Harry sank down to sit on the floor in front of him. There was nothing to stop him from staying here all night with his family. Nothing at all, except... So, back again at Harry. Harry felt, though his insiders had turned to ice. He looked behind him. Sitting on the desk on the wall was none other than Albus Dumbledore. Harry must have walked straight past him, so desperate to get to the mirror he hadn't noticed him. I didn't see you, sir. Strange. How nearsighted being invisible can it make you? Dumbledore and Harry were as relieved to see that he was smiling, so said Dumbledore, slipping the desk to the floor. You like hundreds before you? You have discovered the delights of the mirror of Arise. I don't know what it was called that, sir. But I don't expect you to realize now what it does. It shows my family. And it showed your friend Ron as himself as head boy. How did you? I don't need a cloak to become invisible, said Dumbledore gently. Now, can you think of what Mirror of Arise shows us at all? Let me explain. The happiest man on earth would be able to use the Mirror of Arise and look like a normal mirror. That is, he would look into the seas exactly as he does. Does that help? Harry thought himself, said slowly. It shows us what we want, whatever we want. Yes and no, said Dumbledore quietly. It shows us nothing more than less of deepest and most desperate desires in our hearts. You, who have never known your family, see them standing around you. Ronald Weasley, who has always been overshadowed by his brothers, sees himself standing alone, the best of them all. However, this mirror will give us neither the knowledge of truth, men have wasted it away before and traced by what they have seen, or been wasted away before by what they have seen, or been driven mad by not knowing what it shows or reveals or even possible. The mirror will be removed tomorrow to a new home, Harry. And I ask you not to go looking for it again. If you ever do run across it, you know Be prepared. It does not dwell on dreams and forget to live. Remember that. Now, why don't you put that admirable cloak back on and get to bed?" Harry stood up. "Sir Professor Dumbledore, can I ask you something?" "Obviously, you've just done so," Dumbledore smiled. "You may ask me one more thing, however." "What do you see when you look in the mirror?" I see myself holding a pair of thick woolen socks." Harry stared. "One can never have enough socks," said Dumbledore. "And other Christmases have gone, and I didn't get a single pair. People will insist on giving me books." It was only when he was back in bed that it did Harry that Dumbledore might have not been quite truthful. But then he had thought he had shoved Scabbers off his pillow. It had been quite a personal question. That is the end of chapter 12 for Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!